Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing religious trauma and kind of discussing what that is and what impact that has on us mentally and physically and spiritually. And we're going to be exploring some pathways to healing and recovery, and we'll even touch a little bit on some other subjects such as politics. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us today. It's one of my longest friends. In fact, my longest friend ever, Ashley. And she and I met in kindergarten, and we've kept in contact pretty much our whole life. She moved to New York about 7 years ago, and jokes that she makes money so she can give it to the mouse, and is a huge foodie, loves animals, and is a part of the LGBTQIA plus mafia. And we have a really great conversation, and I'm really happy that you're here. So stick around and listen, because we've got a really juicy one in store for you.
You're listening to Runions Have Layers, the podcast where two siblings explore the many layers of life and mental wellness, where vulnerability meets strength and where every shared story is a step towards self-discovery. Join us as we peel back the layers. If you would like to be notified of upcoming episodes, sign up for our email list at runionshavelayers.com. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend and leave us a rating or review.
Thanks again, Ashley, for coming on and chatting with us about religious trauma. It's just, I think, something that everyone deals with, regardless of whether they're still in religion or they're out of it or they've never, been in religion. I think that everyone probably in some way suffers from religious trauma, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get started, I want to just define kind of what religious trauma is loosely, just so if anyone is not really aware. Holly and I were talking about this yesterday about like how some people, even if you mention like what that is, people are like, "What are you talking about? What is that?" So I just want to kind of give like an overview, and it's really defined as a set of symptoms that someone experiences who has left or is struggling with harmful religious experiences. And that takes a lot of different forms. And, some forms that we discussed were things like purity culture, sexuality, and gender roles, which we talked about in a previous episode last week. And sort of like the effects that have on people and society and everything like that. For me personally, I deal with things like the duality that religion dictates to you, like the good versus bad, heaven versus hell. And that really forced me into thinking that everything was black and white. And if it wasn't one way, it had to be another way. And so I had to like really learn. And I still sometimes feel like I have to take a second and really like dismantle that every like moment sometimes, because it's still something that I really struggle with, is to see like the gray areas and to all the empty gaps that are in reality, because life isn't that simple. And some of the things we discussed were like how they use fear-based sort of tactics to get people to submit, essentially, and how that really plays a effect on people. I think that even something like Stockholm syndrome is kind of what I compare it to, because it's like Stockholm syndrome. Whenever someone's holding you captive and they fall in love with you, or you fall in love with them, and it's like, have you seen that documentary 7M?
No, but I think I've read books that are kind of like that.
One of the things, and I've like watched a lot of documentaries about cults and stuff like that just over the years, and true crime stuff. Yeah. And, a lot of times you hear people who were in cults or captive or something, they're like, they have this sense of like, oh, I miss it. And even though it's fucked up and it was wrong, or I don't know how I got into it, there's a
Right.
sense of like, because they
Comfort.
were,
It's comfort and like you're comfortable in the chaos that you were in.
yeah.
So after
And
you're
then,
out of it, it's like a loss.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like grieving that in a way, even though it's fucked up and all of that sort of stuff, and it really messes with your brain. People still who are victims and have dealt with a lot of different types of trauma are still like, yeah, sometimes I miss it. So I sort of connect that to something like Stockholm syndrome. Um, but yeah, tell me some things that you feel like religion can contribute to, like a traumatic type of experience, like big or little.
I mean, let's just go right into the big stuff, right? So experienced a lot of the whole like purity culture thing. Like that was really big when I was in high school. I remember because I dated somebody converted to Mormonism,
Oh, I remember
and
that.
yep, so I was a sweet little Mormon thing, but I wasn't. I never was. I've never been a sweet little thing just because I've always, been attracted to women and been attracted to, all different walks of life type of people. I never really was on the spectrum of, you're going to marry a man and make babies and not have sex till marriage. Like, no, that was absolutely not my path. So in the Mormon church, like this boy that I was with, we got caught um obviously just being sexually active, and the church found out. I think it was his parents, honestly, that told on him, because in the Mormon church they have this thing called like a mission, and these 18, 19-year-old boys and girls, they go on these like, I don't know, it's kind of like a, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like a god quest, and they're like going out into the world and doing this mission thing. And to prepare for that, they have to do certain things to like lead up to it. So one of them for the boys, I think, is like you can't be sexually active, obviously, because that's not okay before marriage. But like they couldn't even do things like masturbate. Like that was not allowed. So me and this boy were very sexually active in our youth. And we got caught, and the church found out. And we ended up, it was like a Sunday. I remember it was like Sunday church. Like we had just gotten out of church, and the bishop, who is like the reverend, I guess, of a Mormon church. So the bishop was there, and he came over and asked us to come to his office. And I thought it was the weirdest fucking thing. I was like, why? What do we need to go to your office for? And he sits us down, and there's these other men in the room. Mind you, I'm the only female in this room. Okay. So I'm the only girl, and it's all these men and my boyfriend at the time. And they're basically like hammering down on us on chastity before marriage. Like, you really shouldn't be having sex and doing that. It's not safe. And like, they were kind of like yelling at me because I was making him impure for his mission that was coming up. So now he had to like push his date back because he had to like be clean for a certain amount of time before he's allowed to go. Like, it was all so weird. And I'm just
Wow.
sitting there going, don't tell me how to live my fucking life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I was like 14 or 15 at the time. Like I was still a baby, but it was just the weirdest thing. And ever since then, I wouldn't say I've been like sexually deviant, but ever since then, I was like, nobody's gonna fucking tell me what to do with my goddamn body. And now
Yeah.
I'm, a full-on lesbian married to a woman. So here we are, however many years later, and that's a big fat middle finger to the Mormons, right? Like
Yeah,
they would
exactly.
they would burn
Yeah.
me in hell as I am now. So pretty sure they excommunicated me, like found out I was a raging lesbian homo. But yeah, that was a trauma for me. And it was more so
Mhm.
like eye-opening to the fact that like this church and these men were trying to tell me what I needed to do with my body and what I needed to do in my relationship because my boyfriend or whatever was trying to be a clean little Mormon boy, which he wasn't, by the way. He actually tarnished me. I was a sweet little thing before I met him. But yeah, that was a traumatic thing that
I think the kicker in that too is that they were blaming you for making him impure. Like it's like it's your responsibility, or that it's like somehow all on you when you're both making that decision to do it together.
I remember saying something like, we both did this. Like, we both decided that this is what we wanted to do. Like, why are you all talking to me? Like, why are you all staring at me and looking at me? I didn't cry. I wasn't like super pissed off in the moment, but after I left that room, I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I was like, I'm going to burn this fucking building down. Nobody talks to me like that. And I remember seeing one of them on the street, like years later, one of the men that was in the room. Oh, hey, Ashley, how are you? I'm like, ew, don't fucking talk to me. Ew. Step away.
And you weren't like, you didn't grow up religious. Like, this was something that you like kind of you were in this because you were with him, right? Like, that's kind of how you got involved.
Yeah, it was because I was with him, and I was feeling it. I was 13, 14 years old when I first started going to the church, and I liked it. I liked the people. I liked the message. I read the books. And I don't know, I was into it. It was my choice. Nobody forced me to do anything. It was not a smart choice. I was a child, but you live and learn.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, something that Holly and I were discussing, and we've sort of touched on this a little bit throughout a lot of our conversations, but I think it's different for people who are in the church, like from a really young age. Like Holly and I, we essentially have been in church since we're babies, and all of us, all of my brothers and sisters, or sister, and my
how many sisters do you have?
Yeah,
little do you know.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, like we were talking about how a lot of our beliefs are really ingrained in us, and we have to like really work at certain things because our subconscious, forms between the ages of 0 and 7. And so like, not only are a lot of our subconscious beliefs forming from a young age, but then they're reinforced through childhood and puberty and then young adulthood into adulthood. And like I stopped going to church when I was 18 because I had to go to church until I was 18. My parents forced us to go to church. And
okay.
And so like when I was 18, I remember on my 18th birthday, that next Sunday I didn't go, and my I think I slept in or something, and my mom came in the room and she's like, hey, you got to get up for church. And I'm like, I'm not going to church. And she's like, yeah, you are. I said, no, I'm not. I'm 18 now. I'm making my own choice and I'm not going. And that's as quick as it took me, because I was like, by that point I was over it. But still, I want to make the point that like, I feel like people who, even though you don't grow up in church, you can still experience like religious trauma sort of things. But I think it's different for people who grow up in church. And
it's just different all around too, because there's people that go to church, there's people that don't go to church, there's spiritual people that believe in higher callings and higher beings, but not necessarily God or whatever else you want to call it, Sky Daddy, whatever. But then there's also the traumatic experiences of like going to a concert or even just walking down the street downtown, and you get Mr. Crunchy God guy on the corner yelling, you're all damned and Jesus didn't die for these sins, blah, 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 and handing pamphlets out. I'm like, why are you, quote unquote, forcing it down my throat, sir?
Yeah.
I mean, I come from a marginalized community as well, like the LGBT mafia. Like, we're constantly being pointed at as like, you're throwing it down our throat. Like, why does it matter so much? I'm like, yeah, exactly. Why does it matter so much? Why do you care so much about who I sleep with? But then flip the role. Like, I'm not standing on the corner with a be gay sign. I'm not coming to your door, knocking on your door, being like, hey, come join our church, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, that's not happening. So, so like, it's traumatic when I see like that little group of people walking down the street. I'm like, God damn it. Now I have to open my door naked.
Yeah. And
That's how I
it's
got rid of Mormon missionaries, by the way. I was
oh, that's good.
20. I was 20 and they tried to like bring me back to church and I opened the door butt naked. I'm like, hey, what's up? And because for them, they're not allowed to look at a woman or hug a woman while they're on their mission. So it was like a total slap to them.
Oh my
And they're
God.
like 18, 19-year-old boys, right? So of course they look me up and down, sideways, all over, and their whole faces turn red. And they're like, oh, we're sorry. Have a good day. I'm like, yep, bye. Don't come back. They never came back after that. So if you're trying to get rid of missionaries or the Jehovah's or anybody that comes to your door, just open your door naked. They'll never come back.
I remember we had some Mormon people come into our door, and I don't know if Brandon got involved with them, not involved, but like they said they met him somewhere or something, or I can't remember, but for a while, man, we had one or two Mormon guys coming to our house pretty consistently for like a couple months.
Yeah.
And I think eventually my dad was like, don't come back. Like, stop coming here, essentially, because they, at first, I think my dad sort of entertained it, and my dad probably talked to them, and they probably debated about certain things and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think at some point he was just like, we don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, just stop coming back. But I remember that I must have been like, I don't know, 13 or 14, because they came with their bikes and they're dressed in their Mormon get up and everything.
Their little black pants and their short
in the
white
summertime.
shirt.
Yeah. And it was really weird. But something I wanted to mention was that, like, regardless of where you are, I feel like there's always those people that are standing on the street. Like, I was just in South Korea, and I was coming out of the airport, and there were people with like Jesus signs shouting at people on a loudspeaker. And they were all taking turns. There were like 4 of them, and this lady was shouting on a microphone, essentially saying that, come to Jesus or you're going to burn in hell. Cause they had like all these photos.
So. Honestly, like if
and
heaven
I was like,
and hell
what?
are a real thing. Yeah. Like if heaven and hell are a real thing, I'd choose the dark side. Take me to the warmer place, please.
And I was just like, it's just crazy that like it impacts so many cultures, regardless of like I think a lot of people only think of it here in America, but when you go other places, I don't know. I was
it's everywhere.
I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I couldn't understand what she was saying, but I knew what she was saying because I've seen that shit before. And I'm like, oh my God, like she is trying to convert people to, yeah.
You're triggered in that moment. You're like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
God got me here too?
I think I took a photo and sent it to Holly too. I was like, they're even doing this shit in South Korea.
Yeah.
That was crazy. What about you, Holly? What sort of religious trauma stuff have you dealt with?
How much time do we have? I'm just kidding. Man, it's so deeply ingrained in me, and there's people that don't really understand how it affects your sense of self and your entire identity and all of the decisions that you've made. And I mean, for me, absolutely purity culture. We talked about that. And I mean, down to what I was going to do, what my purpose is in life, who I'm going to be in a relationship with, all those kinds of things. And for me, I think the biggest thing that I noticed after leaving religion is the inability to make a decision by myself without asking somebody for their opinion or praying about it, or, finding something in the Bible that made it okay. And that, I didn't know who I was without religion, because I had been, like you said, Brian, literally since I was a baby in the nursery, going to church. I mean, there's a couple of times I stopped, but I always consider myself a Christian or, a believer in God during those times. So yeah, it's been a crazy, a crazy whirlwind. And then on top of that, after leaving religion, the grief and the trauma of the betrayals of the people who you trusted and you thought were your friends and thought you could count on.
And all of that is, added to all of the other stuff. It's just like this big seeping open wound, that never seems to go away.
Yeah.
Because you constantly have to retrain your brain when you're so deeply ingrained in something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar to a cult, which we mentioned before. We had a whole episode about cults. And I mean, we really attribute it to that, because people who are in cults, they get brainwashed and convinced into this whole thing. And religion is essentially that, you're really having to, like you're saying, retrain your brain to not think that way anymore, all the time.
Yeah. I'm lucky in the sense that it's really easy for me to drop something and move on. Like, sadly, for all of my exes, it was really easy for me to move on from all of them where, they were a little more attached to be like, peace, bitch, we're done. Like, move on, go on with your life. So like leaving religion for me, it was just like I took a Band-Aid off. Like, it really wasn't even that awful. And I didn't even realize how traumatic it actually was until I started becoming an adult and I started hearing other people's experience with religious trauma and like watching all the cult shows and all that stuff. I was like, it was really fucking weird what happened to me at that time. I'm like, I didn't think much of it then, but now I'm like, ew, that happened to me. I was in a room with grown ass men. I'm a minor child, and they're all telling me what to do with my sexual life and my body. Are you fucking kidding me? Gross.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really weird. And, when you're young like that, you don't really, you don't have the context to really be like, whoa, like, why are we having this conversation? Like, this is totally not
like, I knew it was
this
wrong.
Is not appropriate. Yeah.
Right. Like, I knew it was wrong. And I remember telling my mom about it, and she was floored. My mother was.
Oh, I can imagine.
Pissed. And my mom, she wasn't good at everything, but if she was good at something, it was raising a very independent, strong-willed, and loud woman. I am of the variety of people that can never not say something. Like, I have to. If you're going to be in my vicinity and basically involve me in your life by being loud or, hitting somebody next to me, whatever it is, I will insert myself into that situation because I can't. I have to stick up for the small person. I have to stick up for the one that doesn't have the voice. Like, it's just in my nature. So my mom did a good job with that. So now, like, in my adult life, like, I'm an advocate for people that don't have the voice to speak for themselves. But yeah, my mom did good with that. Go, Mom. But yeah, she was pissed when she found out. She goes, "Excuse me? Why wasn't I told? Why didn't anyone bring me in?" I'm like, Mom, I don't know. She's like, "I will kill someone." I'm like, Mom, it's fine. Don't worry about it, Mom. She's like, "You're having sex?" I'm like, oh my God. Yes, Mom. Are you using protection? Yes, Mom. God.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was my sex talk with my mom. She goes, "Wait, they brought you in a room because you're having sex?" Yeah, Mom, that's what's happening. Your little girl's growing up.
Yeah, that was something else we talked about with purity culture was, how like me and Holly didn't really get a sex talk because sex wasn't really something that wasn't ever talked about, because sex was bad and you're not supposed to do it. And like, I didn't have sex ed in my school. Yeah. And it's just like something it was a taboo subject altogether. And I don't even know if my mom and dad ever talked about sex. And, it's just like this whole thing, like what was sex ed? Did you get sex ed or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, we did. And I was, again, I'm a very vocal person. And I remember being in sex ed and I was like, why am I in a room with only girls? Why aren't we all learning this together? I was like, this is weird. Why do I have to watch a woman have a baby? Like, this is weird. If anything, sex ed actually educated me enough and started my own personal research into like what it means to be a woman, really, like having babies, periods, all of that. Like, I did my own research because we grew up in a generation lucky enough to have that internet boom. So we had all this information at our fingertips. Was it all true? I don't know, but it still was educational.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about myself.
Back then, it probably was more valid than it is today because there's so much fucking information on the internet now. Back then, it was still so novel that people were putting like actual sources on the internet.
Right. But if anything, sex education introduced me to sexuality because I had no idea, nor was I even interested in boys or anything. Like all my friends were having boyfriends in middle school. And I was like, ew, gross. Like, I'm going to go ride my bike. Gross. I'm going to go skateboard. Go away.
Yeah.
Ashley, will you be my girlfriend? Ew. I'm 10. What? No.
I'm going to go ride my bike.
I mean, it's the same thing with DARE, right? So, like, when they had that whole DARE program, I didn't know anything about drugs until the cop came into our school and showed us all the drugs. I was like, oh, cool. So this is how we know if it's good or bad? And they're like, what? No. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're just showing me what drugs I should buy? Like, this is what they should look like? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Officer. I really enjoyed this education.
Yeah.
This is the stupidest thing. I was like, I probably would never have even known anything about anything if that guy didn't come into my school when we were
same. I mean, they had DARE come in when we were like in elementary school, and I didn't even really have my first encounter with drugs until I was like in junior high. And at that point, I already knew what they were. Really?
Yeah. I was 21 when I first had like marijuana in California.
I beat you both. I was 42.
Holy smoke. Really? Like the first time for anything?
The first time, the first time I drank alcohol, I was 25. And the first time I tried weed was for medicinal purposes. And I had never done it before because the fear of God was struck in me and I thought I was going to go to hell. And I carried that for forever. It was like, I always wondered why I wasn't a more rebellious kid. I just was always the good girl and I was afraid of getting in trouble and I was afraid of going to hell. And so I didn't push the boundaries. I followed the rules. And so I missed out on a lot because of that. But I also, I guess kept myself safe in some ways. But yeah, I mean, if I could go back and relive it, I definitely would probably experiment a little bit earlier. But yeah, it's crazy.
I drugs earlier. Woo!
Yeah, man. Marijuana is good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Just saying that too, like you were afraid that you probably were like, for me, I was never afraid. Like I'm not afraid. I'm not a fearful person. I don't fear death. I don't fear Sky Daddy. I don't fear the big giant man that's walking next to me on the street. Like I'm not afraid. And that's another problem that I have that we can get into that later. But so you were just like so afraid to try something because you probably thought you were just going to die right there. Like this will be the time that I die.
Yeah, because all we heard about drugs was overdoses. So I was afraid to overdose. Yeah. I was afraid if I didn't, that I'd be in the hospital brain dead or, and then, even trying that, even if I didn't die, that I'd be going to hell because I was sinning. And it was all this fear that, I did care. I know other people that I went to church with, same exact church, they did not care at all. So I don't know why I was that way. I just was.
Yep. And it's probably guilt too, because your parents were so ingrained in your religious upbringing. So like feeling guilty of like letting your parents down, like that probably was, I mean, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you or anything, but your parents also are the scary people.
I think also the propaganda that's around drugs in general and like the war on drugs and how government has tried to paint this picture that weed is bad and, make it as bad as heroin and crack cocaine and all the things that are like really hard. Yeah, exactly. And so like that whole war on drugs since Nixon, that was like really what defined, and like reefer madness and all of that really defined how people view drugs. And Republicans and conservatives, like they take that message and they drive it even harder with, the religious perspective. And so I think like you get it from society saying that like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And you get it from religion saying that if you do this, you're sinning and you're going to go to hell. And so I think it's sort of a combination if especially if you're in some sort of religious organization, I feel like you're going to get it from both places. And the whole time it's like, no, like it's not bad at all. Like it actually gives you a lot of benefits, you know? And I think with anything you can obviously abuse it like anything,
Right.
but it's not what anyone made it out to be.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what's funny?
We don't talk enough about alcohol.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Holly, sorry.
Oh, what's funny? What I find interesting. I was listening to a podcast, and there were several reasons why it was made illegal, but one of the main reasons was a push for social purity. So everything ties back to the patriarchy. I mean, literally everything.
God damn.
I know.
It's fucking crazy how ingrained that is in our society in the United States, especially. I mean, I think worldwide, but especially in the United States, it's like, it's so deep. It's crazy. I just read this news line this morning about, not to get too far off tangent, but that this whole thing about IVF and contraception and how that's, related to the whole abortion overturn last couple years ago or whatever. Yeah. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Can you just leave it? Just give it a rest, like stop trying to control.
Everyone wants everyone to have babies. Like keep having babies, but if you need any help to have babies, like that's not okay. No.
Yeah.
You can only have regular babies. No test tube babies, no injection babies. None of that is allowed. It's only regular babies.
Only natural.
Yeah, quote unquote natural, with a man and a woman making a baby. So stupid. Like, do you want us to have kids or not? Like, who cares how we do it?
Yeah.
Like if I ever wanted to have a child, I'm married to a woman, so I don't get to make a free baby. I have to order in.
Yeah, and I don't understand what the problem is with that. Like, I just don't get. But just relating that to patriarchy, it's just like, why are you even having a conversation in the government about this? Like, why? Spend your time with something that's more important that will help everyone instead of just one group of people or feeling like you have some sort of control over what's happening. I just don't understand that line of logic.
Right. Like there's bigger things that they should be worried about, like food insecurity and homelessness. Like, why do we have so many children on the street, but you're so worried about my unborn children in my body? Like, what? Yeah. None of it makes sense. Like, I feel like recently, in recent years, like the past 5 years, I've done that over and over where I'm sitting there going, why? Why? None of this makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because, Christians are very, quote unquote, pro-life. And like you said, they care about the baby in your belly, but not about kids that are in foster care or the death penalty that's killing people, or when we have wars, and we're involved in those wars. It's like, they're not pro-life then. It's only about the baby in the belly.
Or a mother that is going into sepsis because the fetus inside her is literally killing her. But the mother doesn't matter because save the baby, even though it's not really a baby because that thing's going to die immediately when it comes out. But hey, don't worry about the mom, though.
There was an article. There was an article in the Times that was just published about this woman who got pregnant and she couldn't get an abortion because if doctors perform abortions, they get fined like a lot of money, and then no one wanted to do it. And she went into sepsis, and she had so much infection from the miscarriage that she can't have children anymore. And so it's like if she would have just had the abortion when she miscarried, then that wouldn't have been an issue at all. She probably could have tried again and had a kid. But now, because of this law, she couldn't have an abortion, even though she had miscarried, and it was no longer viable. They couldn't abort it because of the law. And it's just like fucked up, man. Like it's just backwards, like you're trying to care for this patient, and there's so many laws that are constraining what they're able to do. And then it has an impact on the person that you're supposed to be caring for, and the whole do no harm thing sort of goes out the window. And you're like, if you were going to, help this person, you could abort it so that your patient would be able to have children again. But no, that's not what anyone is talking about. They're like, no, abortion is bad and you're killing, the baby is already dead essentially. But
right.
I just
and it's like,
which
there's, the thing is like us as women, we have hundreds and thousands of them inside of us. So one loss is really not, this is so insensitive for me to say because I'm just, I'm not of the variety that's going to have children ever because gross, but there's so many of them. So like, who cares if we have to get rid of one because it's going to kill me? Like, I'd rather just get rid of it and then keep going. Like, and that woman, the one that got the sepsis, she's probably destroyed because she actually wanted children. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so backwards, and it all comes right back to religion, right? Like
it does. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is way back in the back in the day, and even today, a lot of the people in government they want to use the Bible as the source of truth for America. And that's just not how it works. And, it's so backwards. It's like, speaking of babies, it's like they feel like they're saving all these lives by doing that. And really we're losing a lot of other lives that are already here.
Isn't there's a mental disability, like, isn't there like a savior complex or something like that? Like, I don't know. Some people need to be evaluated.
Seriously. Yeah. Well, I mean, it quite literally, too old.
Yeah, it quite literally is a savior complex because they're taught that they have to go out and save the world, save the lost so they don't go to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how about just mind your business? Try that. Try that one on for size. Mind your business.
I just Googled it. Yeah, the savior complex is an attitude or demeanor in which a person believes they're responsible for assisting other people. A person with a savior complex will often experience empathetic episodes and commit to impulsive decisions such as volunteering, donating, or abdicating for a cause, which is probably not anyone in Congress, but they're definitely advocating for whatever. And I feel like I don't know. I'm sure there are many people in Congress that believe that way, but I also wonder how many people tout those views and things because that's what the party is wanting and that's what their quote unquote constituents want. That's how they're going to get re-elected. Like I've been doing a lot of. I'm not intending this to be very political, but this episode is becoming a little bit like that. But I just
everything is political these days.
And I've been doing some reading and research on my own, just like trying to understand the whole thing behind Donald Trump and why people are supporting it. And one thing that I recently that I heard on a video I was watching was that people are getting behind him, not because they agree with him, but because that's like the party's nominee. And if they want to be reelected in their district, if they want to get the backing of him, that's the only way that they're going to be able to win reelection. So it's not about that they even give a shit about what he believes. They're only doing it to get reelected so they can stay where they are. And I'm sure there are people that do like support what he does and are just as psychotic as he is, but
brainwashed.
I bet there are like, I'd say probably 50% of people who are just saying it because that's just what you do as a politician. You just say shit and you get people to give you the votes, and then you can change your mind after you're secured in office, And I feel like that's what a lot of things, I think that's what's happening more than not. And a lot of people feel like Joe Biden's not being a good president, so they want to, have someone else and whatever. I digress from that, but I just want to, I guess, point that out, that I feel like a lot of people say stuff like things that are about abortion or that are about like Republican aligned views because it's what their quote unquote base wants to hear. And if their base hears that, then they get reelected. Whether or not they agree with it or not, that's a different story. But I feel like, politicians, especially today, are kind of just saying whatever the fuck they want because there's a precedent for it now. People can just say whatever they want and it doesn't matter. So, but that's dangerous because here we are 2 years ago, Roe v. Wade got overturned that was a
Still can't believe
huge
that.
case. Yeah, like I never thought I would see that in my lifetime, something that monumental get reversed, you know? And the fact that that has been set in law for so many decades, and for that to just be overturned, you know, kind of willy nilly, it's fucking crazy. But you know that culture has been perpetuated and it's been reinforced over the past several years now, and so people are pushing the boundary everywhere they can.
Yep. And it's,
You know,
I don't know, I could also argue that it's kind of a war on women too, because what are women in the Bible? That's supposed to have babies. Like,
Yeah, they definitely have a role to play for sure.
yeah, make babies.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Like, come
Yeah.
on.
the overturn of Roe v. Wade was my breaking point. And I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm done believing in this. I'm done even trying to justify it. I'm just done. And that's when I stopped. And I don't know why it took me that long, but that was my breaking point.
Was that
That
because
was the breaking
of was that
point
because
with
of how they
religion.
were framing it? Like when they announced
honestly,
it?
No. So what kind of like opened my eyes, I guess, is they were talking about the women whose health is in danger. You know, they're like, oh, it's only, you know, 1 or 2 people, you know, and they justified it. And I'm like, that's what they said about COVID. You know, like it made me think like, okay, so the disenfranchised people or the people who are sick or have, you know, a bad immune system, they don't matter because it's only 1 or 2 people. And I think it was personal to me because that's me. I'm in that population. And I'm also a woman who's had an abortion. So I understand what it means to need that service and for it to be grateful for it. And I am a better person today because of it. And it's not, you know, I don't use it as birth control or anything like that, but I can't imagine getting pregnant right now and not having the option if that was the choice that I wanted. And it just, I think because of my own personal experience and it became so personal to me. And I was like, I'm just done. I didn't have any more grace left in me to, you know, justify, oh, well, they're doing this because this and this. I was just like, I'm done with the bullshit. Done. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, it's easy for me to empathize with people because I have never had to have an abortion. I'm saying that I would absolutely get one if, you know, that ever happened to me because I don't want children. I am educated enough to know that that is absolutely not for me. But I can empathize with people because like you, Holly, and like I have friends that have been through it and I have friends that, you know, do IVF and then I get to see and be a part of their struggle as well because like they're my best friends and they confide in me. So I get it from all spectrums and it's just so ass backward. Like we're regressing. We were a population of people that was growing rapidly and all of a sudden we hit this stalemate in this generation that we're in right now and it's horrifying. When is the leaf going to turn over? Because it's going to be, I just foresee it being very bad.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think this is a symptom of other things that have gone unaddressed for so long. Like, you know, people aren't having children because they can't find a job that pays well enough. They're not getting paid well enough. Housing costs are going too high, like inflation, like people can't afford to just pay their fucking rent. So why are they going to have a kid? They can't, you know, do that. People are having kids later because they're focusing on their careers because they can't find jobs that they have an education in. You know, some people go to school and they get a degree and they can't find a job in the degree that they have, and then they have education costs. You know, and like there's all these things. Yeah, there's all these other things that are going unaddressed, and then they think, oh well, if people stop getting abortions, then our population will grow because then people won't be able to do that. But then you have other symptoms of that, which we've been discussing, which is where people, they get sick or they die, or, then they can't have kids because of this decision you thought was going to solve the problem. But really, if you just go to the root of the actual fucking problem and address all these other things that are affecting people's decision not have kids and to not get married, then I feel like that would have a more positive effect if people would focus on the things that people actually deal with and struggle with, and it just pisses people off whenever you take their decision away and they're just like, fuck you. Like this, why are you even, like trying to dictate what I'm doing? Why don't you focus on these other things that I'm actually dealing with? Like, high education costs and high housing costs and income problems. There's so many other things that are really affecting that. But I feel like the conservative party is really, they're trying to focus on the symptoms and they're trying to solve the problem by addressing the symptoms instead of actually addressing what the underlying illness is.
Yep. I always think of it too as like, it's a distraction as well. Like they're harping and going hard on certain topics, like, women's health and things. And I feel like it's also to distract us from the big picture of what actually is happening, because they don't want us to know. They know that we, the people, are bigger than any office. Like there are so many of us and so little of them. Like if we're just talking numbers here and you really want to fight that fight, you're not going to win. So I don't know. People like, we all just need to get on this like same plane of thinking of like, we're all humans. We all should have the right to decide what to do with our bodies and when, regardless of what your gender is or any of that. Like we should just be able to do what we want and live our lives healthy and with a roof over our head and food in our bellies.
For some reason, that's so much hard to ask. I don't understand, but that's really hard for people to get on board with. Go ahead, Holly. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, I find it interesting that for a religion that touts, that we have free will and God gives us, a choice and blah, 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 which we've already talked about, that is specifically with politics, like with abortion and guns and any of that stuff, they want to take the choice away. Like, why does it matter if I choose to get an abortion? That's according to them, that's a sin between me and God. Right. So why does it matter to them if I do that? If it's legal for me, great. They don't have to have one, but they want to dictate and legislate what they consider morality because they think they're saving lives. It's so twisted when you break it down and deconstruct it, because I've only been out of church for like 2 years. So a lot of this is still fresh. And, a lot of me feels really like embarrassed and ashamed that like I even believed that for so long. Yet there's part of me that's like, well, I thought about leaving so many times, but everything was so ingrained in me and I was driven by fear. And I was so afraid that if I, stepped outside the will of God, that I'd be going to hell, and then they taught, if you're out of the will of God, you're going to have relationship problems and financial problems. And, just like this huge list of stuff. And it was just, the only way I can explain it is a mind fuck. That's plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just like, oh my God, like, I can't believe like, cause now that you're far enough removed, you can actually look back and you're like, whoa, like what? I can't believe that I even related myself to something like that, because when you're in a bubble like that, you're in sort of in a delusion, and it's really crazy.
And the amount of times that I allowed myself that, when I was in abusive relationships, that I allowed that person to be forgiven when they sure shit didn't deserve forgiveness. But I was, being the bigger person, and I was allowing, God to have vengeance. And, because they preached that having hate in your heart is the same as murder. And it was just all of this stuff. And when I realized it, one day, like I think it was last year, I texted a friend of mine. I just broke down crying. I was like, I can't believe that I allowed other people to, like, it was still my choice. You know, I'm not blaming anybody, but I allowed other people to dictate my actions, my feelings, what I did with my life and in my relationships and all of that kind of stuff. It's just, it's so sad to me because, you know, things could have been different. I mean, I don't know. They may not have been different. I just feel like my life could have been different and happier in a lot of ways without religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad.
And, you know, there's other ways that we haven't really talked about too, like financial sort of things that cause people to have trauma too. Like, you know, when like people, like I've heard people in churches say things like they don't pay their employees well because they'll say things like your reward is in heaven. Or if you ask for more money, they'll say things like your heart is in the wrong place. And it's like, you know, people are they just want to be able to pay their mortgage and put food on the table and, you know, give support to their kids and, you know, help, you know, give them a good life and all the things that you have to do as an adult, and you need money to do that. And it's like, you know, you're doing a job and you're working however many hours and, you know, they decide to not pay their employees very well. Some of them, I'm not saying all churches do this, but, you know, some churches, I've definitely heard those phrases like, oh, well, your reward's in heaven, or, you know, your heart's in the wrong place. And it's so fucked up that they use that as a way to justify paying you poorly. And it's like,
especially in this economy, I mean, at any time, but especially when, you know, everything is, you know, inflation is going up, gas prices, food prices, everything is rising, and they either want to, you know, not give you a raise or not pay you what you're worth. I mean, even the market rate, you know, I have heard other people getting paid like way, way lower than what even the market rate is for the job. And, you know, I mean, speaking for myself as someone who worked full time at a church at one time, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter because I'm doing this, you know, out of the goodness of my heart and because I care about people. And that gets old really quick when you can't pay your bills.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can't do that forever, you know. It's kind of like being an intern, you know. You're like, oh yeah, I can do this for a little bit because I need to earn my keep and whatever. But then at some point you're like, all right, I'm working 60 hours a week here. I need to like, you know, I need to find a job that I can actually pay my bills with and, you know, support myself. And
it reminds me of one of those videos on like TikTok or something where somebody's calling to order a to-go meal and they're like, okay, it'll be, you know, 15. They're like, oh no, Jesus paid it all. I don't know anything. Or like, you know, if you want to pay your rent or whatever. Oh, okay. Yeah. When I get my reward in heaven, then I'll pay you. You know, like it doesn't do us any good here on earth.
Exactly.
I was just going to crack that joke. Like, where do I send my invoices so God will pay them?
Right. Yeah.
Is God paying my credit card this month? Because that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's insane, you know, the kind of shit that churches pull. And then it's even more fucked up whenever like they do something that is shady or like basically illegal. They have certain protections that protect them from getting in trouble from doing fucked up shit because of the separation of church and state. So like they have certain protections under law that gives them a certain amount of anonymity from the government looking at like their financial records or like the Equal Employment Act or FMLA or Disability Act. Like there's all this shit that they can do, and essentially they don't get in trouble for it because of the separation of church and church and state, excuse me. And so like, that's just another layer over everything else that they can do and how they justify, you know, using Christianity as a way to not pay you or to not give you the things that you deserve as an employee. I was
doing some research, and I found out that there's something called the ministry exception or minister's exception. If you want to bring a lawsuit to a nonprofit that is a religious organization, not just a church, but any religious organization, if that person is any type of ministry staff, like a pastor or someone that's close to like, I don't want to say close to the top because it depends on the church organization, but somebody who's like close to ministering to people, that they are like accepted or like excused from any of those legal actions, which is bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think I found some similar information like that. And also, conversely to that, they can use that against you too. And they can let you go because you're not performing in your ministry duties. They can use that as an excuse to separate with you, regardless of like if they ask for an accommodation for a disability or something like that. Instead of saying no, we're not gonna do that, they can say, oh well, you're not doing your ministry duties or whatever like that, and they can use that as an excuse to fire you over that, even though that, oh, I asked for an accommodation, now they're letting me go because they don't want to accommodate me, and they don't have to. Essentially, under law, they don't have to.
Or, well, yeah, it depends on the situation, or if you don't believe the same way they do. Some organizations are allowed to, like, the statement of non-discrimination by, race, color, creed, sexuality, although a lot of religious organizations can discriminate based on religion because they want people to believe, the same way they do. So, say like you want to go, I don't know why you would, but say like you want to go work for an organization, but you don't believe the same way as they do. They can just be like, no, I'm not going to hire you. Or if it changes while you're, in their employment, they can just fire you. Which, I mean, most states are at will states anywhere where you can be fired for anything at any time. But, that still is a type of discrimination that isn't fair.
Right. And before all of those discrimination laws were put in place, let's just say like a company that is ingrained in faith, like a Christian organization or even like a Catholic business or something, they would, let's just say like a woman works for some Catholic something, and that, because I'm not, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure, but I think in the Catholic religion, contraceptives are like against their beliefs. So
yeah, that's right.
If you were a woman that wanted contraceptives, that worked for this organization and tried to get them, you'd be denied, and you'd be like, oh no, we actually can't allow you to do that because that's against our religious beliefs, and you work for us, so whatever. Like telling me I can't go to the doctor to do things, like what?
Yeah.
What?
And that's supposed to be private information anyways, so it's like, why? That's like, it's just crazy. I don't understand any of that.
No, honey. No contraceptives. Just let Jesus take the wheel, okay? Like you'll be all right. It's God's plan. What?
Yeah, God's will.
I'm sorry. Did God bring me to this planet? Has God paid for my bills? Has God fed me every day? I don't think so. Haven't seen him or her or whatever it is, but come on now. Like, I think I'm doing this on my own, so I should be able to decide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like my health. Like, no.
Yeah.
I don't even like going to the doctor, but if I needed to, no one's telling me I can't.
Right. Yeah. And that's also, when we talk about religious trauma or trauma in general, it's not just about what happens. It's also about what doesn't happen that should have happened. And medical stuff is a huge part of that. A lot of it depends on what denomination that you're a part of and what their beliefs are. But me personally, I went to churches that believed that in spiritual healing, and some didn't believe in going to doctors. Some did. It just depended. But like, you were supposed to put all of your faith in God to heal you. And so there were so many times I didn't go to the doctor because I was, just praying and having faith. And, I was miserable. And thankfully, none of the illnesses that I had were life-threatening. My quality of life wasn't great, but I can't imagine someone being diagnosed with cancer and being like, okay, just believe. just have faith.
Yeah.
I mean, I know our thoughts are powerful. Right. Yeah. I mean, I know our thoughts are powerful, and there's benefits to positive thinking. And, I'm not saying that doesn't have a place, but, medical care and a medical team are really, really important. And I remember when I was, it was right after my oldest son was born. And I told my husband at the time, I was like, I think I'm depressed. I think I need to go to the doctor to get some medicine. I mean, it was probably postpartum depression. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad as, some people have. And he said, no, you don't need that. You don't need the medicine. And because I was in this relationship where I'm supposed to be submissive and I'm supposed to, I didn't go to the doctor, and I suffered for years with depression, not even realizing it was from all kinds of different things, but, medication can be so helpful. And there was a long period of time where I was so resistant to it because it was unnatural, and it wasn't something that God created. And, and I just recently started medication for ADHD and hormone replacement therapy. And I'm a totally different person. And I'm like, man, if I would have been on antidepressants 20 years ago when he was born, my life could, it's just like all these things I keep thinking my life could have been so different. And of course, I don't know how it would have been. It may not have been different, but just the thought that it could have been improved in some small way, it just pisses me off.
Yeah. And not even just going to the doctor for physical things, but just going to like a therapist and taking care of your mental health. And like you're saying, if you have depression, like just going to a therapy session, like that is not even supported. It's like, oh, we'll just, talk to, the people in the church, or talk to your pastor, pray about it. There's all these other things. It's like, no, I don't need that. I need to like fucking talk to a professional so I can get my thoughts in order. And so I can deal with this depression. And again, it's like the symptom, and they're not dealing with the actual problem. They're trying to pray it away or like distract you from it. And it's like, oh, well, it must be because, you're straying from God or you're backsliding. And like, they try to justify it with all these other things. It's like, no, like that's just what it is to be human. Like you have things that you deal with, and you have to be able to navigate those. And when you don't learn how to do that growing up, because especially someone in a church, like you don't talk about your feelings and things like that. At least we were brought up that way. Probably not everyone is, but you have this, it's sort of, and especially as someone who's a male, there's definitely even more socioeconomical things and like the societal pressures of what it is to be a man, and how you're supposed to behave, and how you're supposed to not talk about feelings and things like that I had to deal with. And that layered on top of religion and all that sort of stuff. So I think that, like definitely dealing with your mental health is as important as being able to go to a doctor whenever you're feeling sick about something, instead of just ignoring it and saying, oh, well, God will take care of it because I have faith that he's going to do it. But then when it doesn't get better, then you're worse off. You can develop worse conditions because you're not taking care of the things you actually need to do.
Right. Because some people are not geared with the tools to self-regulate. Because what do you do when you're praying? You're just talking to yourself. You're getting through your shit yourself. It's just like meditation. Meditation and praying go hand in hand. Meditation, you're just getting in your own mind and regulating your feelings, your emotions. You're really sitting with how you're feeling in your body. Like some people don't have that skill to self-regulate. So they need help. They need to be able to reach out to professionals and psychologists and psychiatrists and everybody that's, gone to school for years to help you through things, even life coaches. Life coaches also are big helpers in our society today. But it's just like some people just don't have that. So they need to be able to reach out to people. And my God, if somebody said to me, like, oh, did you pray about it? I'd probably punch them in the face. Like, I just go right to violence. I'm like, you need a broken nose. That's what you need.
Yeah.
God told me, God possessed me to punch you in the face. You should probably go pray about it now.
Yeah.
Tell me what God says.
What compounds that issue and makes it so much worse is some denominations teach and believe that mental health issues are demonic possession. And then it puts the fault on you for opening up the doorway, quote unquote, to Satan to come into your life. And that is such a dangerous belief, because they don't believe in going to therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. And they believe in praying away the mental illness. And, some mental illness can be, it doesn't have to have medication, but some is like really, really serious. And, they're not qualified in the least to make that kind of decision. And it just, it's scary to think about if I wouldn't have bucked the system and went to the doctor and my therapist anyway. I mean, I didn't have a choice. I was suicidal in the hospital. I had to get help,
Right. Because some people's bodies, it's chemicals, it's literal reactions in your body that God can't fix. God can't jump in your body and make the chemicals not do the things that they're doing. Like, you actually need help to regulate those things. And it's harder for some people. And some people are just able to eat it and move and, walk the God life and live. But, those people also die resentful. They die resentful because they get on their deathbed and they realize, like, wow, like I went this whole time suffering.
Yeah. For no reason, like something that could have been dealt with, like ADHD, like suffering with ADHD, when if you could just take some medicine to help balance those chemicals out, like you could see the life in through a totally different lens, and you'd feel like so much better, like it's like, I don't feel like I have that struggle. Like I feel like I'm a little ADHD sometimes, but I have a really good friend and also Holly who has ADHD. But my friend said a similar thing, that like he got diagnosed with ADHD and he started taking medicine, and it was like night and day, where he used to not be able to focus on stuff, and he was always late. He could never like get his homework done. And as soon as he got on medication, it was like, bam, he was like in the zone, like ready to do whatever he needed to do. And he was so much more focused on the things that he needed to get done in life. And there's no reason for people to have to suffer for that. It's like, just go to the doctor and tell them what you need and let them help you. That's why they're there, is to help you with those sort of things. And God ain't helping you. So if that's not working for you, like, I understand if people want to like try it out, I'll pray for it, like I'm going to trust God. But after a certain time, like, maybe a month, it's like, okay, I'm going to go see a doctor now, because like this isn't working apparently. Like,
like how much suffering is enough for you to like snap that in your mind and go, I don't think God's listening to me. I'm over here like bleeding from my eyeballs and it's not getting better.
Yeah, exactly. It's just funny to think of all those televangelists like Benny Hinn and guys like that who, they hold all these huge evangelist events, and they're
healing services.
Healing services where they're like healing people from being in wheelchairs and cancer and all this sort of stuff. It's just like
but only if
you donate. Only if you donate.
Yeah, only if you donate. Exactly. That's the only way you can get up on stage.
Right.
It's just it's crazy.
Did I tell you I went to one of those? Benny Hinn?
No, you didn't.
Yeah. No. But I was sitting so far in the back. Nothing happened. I mean, I can't remember what I've had migraines since I was a teenager. So I think that's probably what I was praying about or needing healing from. And I still have migraines today. I mean, nothing happened.
Yeah.
So the demon didn't leave your body?
I guess not, because man, I suffer with, I know.
Dang it. I mean, listen, if it's a demon that's gotten me this far in life and I'm still alive and well, great. Hail Satan, I guess, because thank you, demon. Because there were times in my life where I thought about suicide, and I even tried it. And like, I was not mentally in a good place for a very long time because of all of this, like trying to find myself and getting comfortable in who I am and accepting me for me, and all this internalized misogyny that I was dealing with. And yeah, like if it's a little monster baby inside of me, then hell yeah. Woo! let's go. Let's see what else I can do with this demon baby inside of me.
Yeah.
I just picture like a little horned monster that like just pops out and sits on my shoulder. It's like, yeah, let's do this.
What helped you come out of that, Ashley? The suicidal thoughts and depression and
a lot of personal growth work. So my mother was very young when she had me. So my mom was always more of a friend than she was a mom. And she would probably argue against me in saying that, but this is my experience of her. She was more my friend than my mom. So I couldn't really go to her when I needed help. So I was struggling mentally when I was in high school, middle school. And it was more just like, when I look at it now, it has to do with like my sexuality and like what I found attractive. And like, I always was attracted to my friends. Like I had girlfriends, obviously, but I was always attracted to them. Like, I think that's why I was like so weird in middle school, not wanting a boyfriend. It's because I was pining over all my girlfriends. Like, I was like, I'd rather date you. So I was just not in a good place. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have any role models around me. So I didn't see what a good relationship looked like. My mom was divorced since I was 5. So I didn't have those examples. And like, anytime I went to like my friends' houses and I saw their parents, like everybody's got their own issues. And I would just see the problems in the house. Like, I was a very observant person. I still am. I notice everything. I think that's part of like undiagnosed ADHD, and like autism, 100%. So I just notice everything. So I am also very empathic. So I take on a lot, and I really, like I said, I can really get in somebody's shoes with them. And a lot of my upbringing, I was faced with a lot of people around me that were dying. There was suicide at one of my schools. Someone had killed themselves that I knew. There was a really bad car accident that happened when I was in school, and it killed 4 people. So people were just dying all around me, and I had to get really comfortable with death. And I had to get really comfortable with the idea of me just existing and like just being comfortable in my own skin. Like, even today, I feel like my internal parts are wrong. Like, every time I menstruate once a month, I feel like it's the most useless part that my body does. Like, God, do you know how many times I go to the doctor and I ask, can you just take them out? I don't need them. Having a period every month is the most useless process for me. I'm not having children, and that's all it's for, is to keep me fertile. Just take the parts. But yeah, like I struggle with that too. Like, I think about my internal organs, and I'm like, why do I have a uterus? Like, I don't need this. I don't need this at all. So to get through it, it was personal growth work. I signed myself up for a lot of they were like spiritual getaways, I guess you could call them, like yoga retreat types of things. So lots of connection with other people, lots of like group work that I did, just connecting with humans, connecting with other people that have been through other things, really helped me to realize that like my things that I was so concerned about were so small when it comes to like the whole like big picture of the world. I'm just this little tiny speck on this planet existing with everybody else who also has their own trials and tribulations. So yeah, it was personal growth work, connection with other human beings, really putting myself out there to connect with people I wouldn't normally connect with. And then I did a lot of psychology work. So I went to counselors, I went to life coaches, lots and lots of hours of just kind of really dialing in on what makes me me. I was also a psychology major in college. So my education was also kind of like a walkabout, learning myself. Because as you're learning about diseases and psychological issues and everything in the DSM manual of diseases and things, you kind of self-evaluate and you kind of get more experience with that. So really, it's been a very long journey for me. And the journey never ends. It's something you have to continuously work at. So I am constantly trying to find ways to fill my own cup so that I can be of service to others. Because that's what I feel like my purpose on this planet is to help those around me. And I can't do that if my cup is not full. So like today and tomorrow, I took mental health days. I do that at least once a month for my job. You get PTO days, take them. That's what they're for. They're yours. They're yours. So I took today and tomorrow as mental health days. One of my favorite mental health practices that I do is get tattoos. I love tattoos. I'm covered in them. I love the pain of them. I get to really live through experiences, like bad things that have happened in my life when I'm getting tattoos. And I'm able to grow through them that way. It's a very cathartic experience for me. And the pain of the tattoo is, I think, what helps me the most. Because I have super high pain tolerance. And that kind of like brings me back to feeling human is when I get those tattoos. Same thing with like other self-care things. Like I love getting my eyelashes done. I love fake eyelashes. They're the best. And I sit there, it takes roughly like 2 to 3 hours to get your eyelashes done. And the woman that I go see, she's amazing. She's also had a very trial-filled life. So I get to talk to her for a few hours. So it's the community that I built around me, the family that I've built around me that has gotten me through that. Do I still think about it sometimes? Yeah, of course I do. Like there's days where I'm just like, I'm fucking done with this place. Somebody expire me, please.
Yeah, I know. Please. I mean, I hear you. It's like, I'm not actively suicidal or actively trying to end my life, but the way that society is, and like life should not have to be this hard for everybody. And I'm like, okay, just unsubscribe. I'm done. Right. But I mean, I don't really mean it. Like, I don't really want to kill myself, but it's just like things get so overwhelming at times. I'm just like, what would it be like if, I just wasn't here anymore? And then I think of my family and my kids and, I get all upset, but it's kind of a like, well, what would happen,
Right. Then the guilt racks you up a little bit and you got to get back in your own head and retrain your brain again, like relive the traumatic experiences. Like for me, I don't believe in God. I just don't. I don't believe in any of that. I believe in a higher calling. Yes. I believe in spirituality. I believe that our ancestors are still around us always. And I believe that our souls predate us. So our souls have been around longer than our physical forms have. And our souls, as they continue to come back into a life. So when I die and I'm reborn somewhere else, my soul, I'm going to live a different life. And I feel like the life that I'm living now is the journey that my soul needed to learn for the next life. So the better that I do, I'll set up the person next that gets my soul. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's a journey. It's something that never ends. Yes, I still think about it, and especially when the world is so shitty and it just keeps getting worse. I really have to dial in on the things that help me. So like getting tattoos, that helps me a lot. I spent a lot of money on therapy. That I believe in that 100%. It's not really for me anymore. Because it's really hard to find a therapist that I can relate to 100% because nobody's really walked my path. You know what I mean? So once I get down and like through those foundational types of things with a therapist, and then I start talking about, deeper stuff, and I don't get the kind of reactions or things that I need from somebody, then I'm just like, yeah, I'm wasting my time. I can do this myself. Yeah. I learned a lot of self-regulation skills from connecting with other people.
Yeah, I think that's why, like what you mentioned earlier, that like life coaches can be so helpful because, they're not therapists, but usually like I'm a coach, and it's because of all of the crap that I've been through in my life so that I can help people through what they've been through. And it's like, I have a therapist and she's great. But she hasn't been through a lot of the stuff that I've been through. Now she's still been helpful for me, but sometimes there does reach a point where all they have is their book knowledge, their intellectual, like what they learned, in school, which is fine. It's great, but they don't have the real life experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Because really, like, my belief, psychiatrists and psychologists, like, we went to school, and I feel like those people are the most fucked up in most cases. Like, you gotta be a little twisted to help a twisted person. You gotta be twisted to help twisted people. So, like, for me, like, I've had an interesting life. And it's easy for me to empathize with other people because like most cases, like I've been there, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So like my service to other people is like another way that I am able to fulfill myself and feel good about my life, is just helping others around me. So I would say, Holly, it's connection. Because what are humans? Like we were born to connect with each other in some way, shape, or form, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, uh, one night stands, whatever. We're always connecting with people. And it's those connections and the community that you build around you that help you get through this life on this freaking rock that is just
Mm-hmm.
flying around in the middle of nowhere.
And I think that once you've gone to therapy and you have the skills to talk about your feelings and what your emotions and identifying that. And I think that therapy is really great for people who don't know how to do that, or they need someone who has the same language, lexicon to be able to talk about the feelings that you're having in a really significant kind of way. But if you have built a community of people who are, who embrace being vulnerable and talking about feelings, and, people that have a high EQ, then that you can successfully accomplish the same tasks with your friends or people that you have in your life that have those same sort of the same set of vocabulary to talk about those things and have hard conversations about the things that you're dealing with. Because I feel like sometimes for certain people, like they either aren't self-aware enough, they don't have any emotional awareness, they don't know how to talk about their feelings, they never learned how to talk about their feelings, and so they don't obviously have people around them that are able to do that either, so I think that therapy is good for people that don't have that. But once you start to learn that, and you have learned that, and you have the skill and you practice it often, then I think naturally that permeates into your significant others, your friendships, the people that you surround yourself with, and then you can have honest, open conversations. And I think that accomplishes the same thing as a therapist. And I think, there are times when you want to go to a therapist and maybe you want to talk about something that's confidential, that's a little bit more private. Maybe you don't want to share it with a friend or something. I think that's good too. But I think that I sort of ran into the same issue where I got this therapist that it was a new therapist, and I hadn't taken therapy in a few years. And I was talking to him, and at the end of the session, he was like, "You sound like a really healthy person. Like, what do you need therapy for?" And I was just like, from that moment, I was just like, okay, this is not the right person, because you're not like, I don't know. It's just like, you can't help me.
That's a weird thing to say to me, sir.
Yeah. It's like, so you're saying I don't need therapy. And I explained what I wanted through the therapy session. And this is my first session. And he was sort of saying that it sounds like you've got a really pretty healthy understanding of life and all this different stuff. And I was just like, okay, I don't think that you're my therapist, because you're not getting it. But anyways, I digress from that. But I think that people eventually, I think, can sort of replace therapy with the things that they do in everyday life and the people that they surround themselves with, because at some point, like you're saying, it becomes an experiential thing, to where you're like, you want to connect to people who understand your experience. And then if you can talk about it in a way that matters and that's significant with someone who has the similar language, and being able to talk openly about it, that is more impactful than going to a therapist who, might be able to talk to you about it and might be able to be an observer and reflect things back to you. But if they don't have that experience, in a way, it's, I think, less helpful, because you don't have that relation to the actual experience that you want to discuss.
Yeah.
So
connection.
That's my opinion. Connection. Yeah, it's all about connection.
It goes back to connection. Like if I'm not connecting with that therapist, you're not going to get anything from that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Well, I think we should wrap up here. We've been talking for quite a while, and I'm so grateful that you came on to talk with us, Ashley. It's been an amazing conversation. I learned so much from you, and the things that you brought up and that you contributed is like really awesome. I had a lot of fun talking to you, and so thank you for like talking about this leaving religion series. And we went off into a lot of different areas that I wasn't expecting, but it was sort of a surprise and delight in a way. So thank you so much again for coming on and talking to us. Thank you for joining us and peeling back the layers today. If you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to support it, please share it with others, and please leave a review, like, subscribe, all that jazz. For more information about us, you can visit runionshavelayers.com, where you can find how to get connected with us and find resources mentioned in our episodes. Bye for now.